For the reflection, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Jay Warmke, a well-respected member and friend of FUSM. Jay is an expert in green technology. He has authored numerous books and articles on the subject and has taught solar design and installation at several colleges and in numerous short-term workshops. I hope I'm accurate to say that. He and his wife Annie have walked the walk and been exemplars of green living by establishing Blue Rock Station, a 40-acre sustainability farm located south of Zanesville. He is a consummate teacher. I'm just going to sit down and enjoy this. Please come up.
Thank you. Okay, today we're talking a little bit about transitions, and I think it's apparent to everyone we are living through a transitionary period in our society. It's one of those that come along only once every 50 years, maybe every 100 years, as significant as the transition from the age of agriculture to the Industrial Revolution, as significant as the post-World War II period, when we moved from what was to what we have been living in. And we're going through one of those transitions now, and it feels disruptive. It feels disruptive because it is. It is disruptive. It's as disruptive as going from childhood to adolescence. But you don't want to stay in childhood all your life, right? So these disruptions are necessary as we move through our existence. There's a Chinese curse called that I've heard. It's been attributed to this. It's "May you live in interesting times," you know, and these are indeed interesting times. I want to talk a little bit about energy and how this is going to affect us, and it's something I think a lot about. You probably don't, maybe a little bit on the side when you run out of gas, but it's a small thing, but it will be significant. And I think this is another Chinese saying. I've heard it somewhere. I hope I made it up. But no one ever trips over a mountain, right? It's the little things that catch you up. And this is a little thing that will be significant. Now, in our world of energy, and I'm specifically talking about electricity, something we're all used to, something we all use, for the last 20 years or so, we've been living with level demand. As we've seen more and more demand come from things, we've also seen increased energy efficiency, the move towards electronics. So if you look at the overall demand curve, for the last 20 years, it's been flat. And this is the world that the people who provide us with electricity have lived with for their entire adult life. That's changing. And it's changing dramatically. The advent of electric vehicles, the advent of data centers, artificial intelligence, the electrification of heat, the stupidity of cryptocurrency, all of these things are adding significantly. We talk about the hockey stick curve, the projections there. And the projections from our government say that we're going to see about a 3% increase in demand each year, compounding itself. These come from the Energy Information Administration, and the nice thing about the EIA over the years is they have always been wrong. That's the thing we know for certain, is they are wrong. So let's take a look at the numbers. Okay, currently, we have electrical generating capacity of 1,335 gigawatts. I know these numbers don't mean much, but you'll see the reason I'm quoting them. If we have a 3% growth rate, in 3 years, I'm talking 3 years, the end, hopefully, of the Trump administration, right? We will have the need for 125 gigawatts more generating capacity. But at the same time, the plans currently are to retire 95 gigawatts of power plants, the coal power plants, the aging gas power plants. These are already scheduled. So now we're up to 220 gigawatts that we need. Our best year ever, last year, we constructed about 50 gigawatts of additional generating capacity. So given those numbers, we're already short by a bit. But the aforementioned Trump administration has decided at this moment to declare war on wind and solar by eliminating most of the subsidies that were put in place that were designed with this shortfall in mind, saying we are entering into a period of high demand, we need to incentivize people to build these things, and so we're gonna subsidize it. We could build the roads, but why not help people build their own roads? Essentially, that's what we're doing. So they're putting that away. So all of our projections say that will reduce generating capacity, new generating capacity, by at least 40%. So not 150 gigawatts of new capacity when we need 220. It's going to be closer to, say, 90. So now we're short. Okay, how short? We're short by about 9%. A 9% disconnect between demand and supply. Best case scenario. Doesn't sound like much. Those of us who lived through the oil crisis of the 1970s, when the oil Arab embargo was put in place, that was not an increase in demand, that was a restriction of supply. It created a 7% disconnect between supply and demand. When there is 7% less supply of energy than demand, prices quadrupled. We're looking at a best case scenario of 9%. That's the good news. Okay, let's really look at the numbers. Remember, I said EIA is always wrong. The current projections show that between 10 and 30% of all of our vehicles by 2028 will be electric vehicles. If it's 20%, that will require an additional 14% more electricity than we're currently providing. That will be a 14% increase in our demand. Data centers currently take 4.4% of all of the energy we use. By 2028, it's estimated to be 12%. That's an additional 7.6% demand. We're electrifying our heating. We're moving away from natural gas to mini splits, heat pumps, estimated to increase 5 to 10% over the next 3 years. There's a thing I like to tell my students. I said, always remember when something's going on over here, something's going on over there, right? A lot of these things are happening all at the same time. Cryptocurrency. Did you know it takes $40,000 worth of electricity to generate 1 Bitcoin? We are basically turning electricity into money. That's estimated to increase between 1 to 3% our demand over the next 3 years. Global warming, another 1 to 3%, just cooling people down, cooling things down. That's another 9%. The growth of industry, another 3%. We're up to 42% increase in electrical demand over the next 3 years, at a time that they're projecting 9%, and we don't have enough to meet that. The reason I'm saying this is it won't be on the high end, and it won't be on the low end. It's going to be somewhere in between. And at this moment, be prepared. It's the little things, you know, that you don't think about. I always loved the show West Wing, and Toby had this quote, you know, Toby Ziegler, and he said, it's the everyday things, it's the everyday American things, the 99-cent things that when you suddenly have to worry about them, it strikes at the sense of equilibrium. And that's something we're going to be dealing with. Okay, so I always feel like Debbie Downer when I come up here, right? Okay, so this is just, and I guess forewarned is forearmed, right? We know this is going to happen. We know that energy is going to be a thing. So now is the moment to make preparations, if you can, to become a little more self-sufficient, to know. Most of you are in a privileged position. You can afford if your electric bill quadruples. In fact, when I talk about these things, Annie always says to me, what about the poor people? I said, oh, they're going to get screwed. They always do, right? I can't change that. I can just say what's going to happen. But like with the oil embargo, the oil crisis of the 1970s, I think those of us who lived through that period know that it changed things. It changed things dramatically for decades. It was a tremendous economic shock, but it was a cultural shock as well. And it led to some things, some very positive things. An awareness of energy, an awareness of the need for conservation. It led to fuel-efficient vehicles, to mass transportation, all of these things. Cynthia was saying she met dear friends carpooling, right? You begin to change your behavior socially. We saw insulated homes. We saw an environmental movement. It led to the world of renewable energy. That's all positive. The energy crisis of 2028 will have similar societal impact. I think even more so. I think we need to understand, and this is one of those transitions we're going through, we have left the age of fossil fuels. We no longer live in the age of fossil fuels. Over the last 10 years, the vast majority of new energy that has been added to the grid here in the United States has been wind and solar. Last year, 95% of all new energy was wind and solar. Coal is dead. Nuclear is dead. These things, and they're not dead because we all protested. They're dead because they are no longer economically viable. And that is where society makes big changes. It is now in our economic self-interest to be green. It is in our economic necessity to be green. Far and away, the lowest cost energy sources is the energy from the sun. And we are transitioning. We are transitioning with or without government subsidies. So that's a positive, but it's like a recovering alcoholic. We're still living with the consequences of our past behavior, and we will. We'll continue. These things have a lag. They have a period of time. It will not be our generation that experiences the benefits of this transition. It may not even be your children's generation, but it will be their children's generation. The good thing about this energy crisis is that we are beyond peak greenhouse gas emissions. Already, this year is the peak. China is now installing more renewable energy than they are fossil fuels, and they're retiring their own. The world is transitioning. We are beyond. We've climbed the hill and now we're on the downhill side, but it will be a 30 or 40 year lag that the behavior that we've lived with will take to work itself through. But that's all positive. All the things that you wanted to happen are happening, and they're going to accelerate. When you quadruple the price of electricity, you quadruple the progress of ending global warming. It's a natural consequence. The utilities, the fossil fuel companies, are not going to go away, right? Just like the railroads didn't go away. But in the 1800s, the railroads were the most important, the most politically dominating industry in the United States. They didn't go away, they just became less important. And this is what the current energy infrastructure we're dealing with is going to do. Fossil fuels aren't going to go away. But people are going to look at them, and they're going to be people going, can you believe we used to burn that stuff? It's too valuable. I mean, it's like burning teak and mahogany for firewood. Why would you do that? It can be used for so many other things. It has a much higher value that do not cause greenhouse gases, that perhaps do not have externalized issues there. The paradox that we're going to be dealing with is that as energy becomes super expensive, it becomes free. And that's something that's hard to wrap your head around it. Because the structure that we're currently living on with utilities and the like, maximizes profits. When scarcity develops, you begin to increase prices. But currently, for example, in Australia, it costs $1 a watt to install solar. When you take away the barriers that our government has placed in the solar installation, for an average home, that's $6,000 to put in energy that will meet the needs of that home for 25 years. If the energy costs, for a typical electric bill is $200 a month, as the prices increase, then you're looking at a bit less than 3 years before the energy is free. So in less than 3 years installing solar on your home, your cost of your electricity is now free. You multiply that 1,000,000-fold, you add that into buildings, the utility model will not survive this transition. The utility of the future will not look like AEP. It will not look like First Energy. The current development as it's proceeding will look like Apple. It will look like Facebook. It will look like Google. All of those companies are currently registered as utilities. What we will find is as energy approaches free, you will no longer pay for energy. You will no longer pay for a gallon of gasoline. You will no longer pay for a kilowatt hour of electricity. You will pay for the services that are associated with the energy. And this is going to be a huge transition. Just like with your phone, you don't pay any longer for bandwidth, you pay for Netflix. You're buying bandwidth, but you're watching Netflix, right? You're not going to pay for electricity, you're going to pay for the services associated with that energy. I don't know what those are, but you won't be able to live without them. Just like Netflix, right? So this is one of those transitions, and it's going to be difficult for us to get our heads around it. If every vehicle is electric, every vehicle is a power plant. You can hook your car up to your home, and you can run your home off your car for a week if there is no grid. And if there are 100 million cars all plugged in, you've got 100 million batteries that back up the grid. We're already into the world of virtual power plants. You'll have virtual utilities. I will guarantee you within 10 years, the biggest utility in the country will not own a single power plant, will not own a single wire. It will be the PayPal of utilities. And think about how that could happen. Let's say Apple. Apple has invested in their own power plants. They like the fact that they get a good return on it. They then say, we want to continue to build this, and the utility says, we'll buy it from you, but only at wholesale. They say, we don't want that, we want retail. They say, too bad, so sad, and then they'll sue. And just like telecommunications, it is a public utility, and they will be able to rent access to the grid. So Apple now owns 10% of the grid, and let's say Vic is generating power. You don't want to sell it back to AEP because they're not giving you a good price. Sell it to me. I'll buy it. And how does that happen? Apple sets up a marketplace. For $5, you get iPower on your phone, and now we're part of a virtual utility. And I can buy your power, you can buy my power, a marketplace, and Apple quickly becomes the largest utility in the country without owning a single wire. This is the kind of transition we're moving into. So what we're dealing with, I find it interesting. There's an old story that says if Alexander Graham Bell came back and looked at our communication system, he would say, look at satellites, internet, video, wireless. Look at it, this amazing transition. And if Thomas Edison came back and looked at our electrical grid, he goes, those transformers are getting kind of old. Probably need replaced. It has not changed since the age of Edison and Tesla. It's effectively the same. All of that is changing. We are beginning to see the Internet of Things, where electronic devices will communicate with each other via the electrical system. We're seeing virtual utilities, virtual power plants, distributed energy. All of this will be extremely positive, and all of it will probably cause problems that we don't foresee. The first person who ever saw a car driving down the road probably didn't say that thing's going to cause global warming one day. Mark my, he just said it scared my horse, So the positive thing about this is since the Industrial Revolution, we have seen 150 years of the greatest economic prosperity that the world has ever known by harvesting half of the fossil fuels that were in the ground and turning them into economic activity. The fossil fuels were always in the ground, but they were not turned into economic activity until the Industrial Revolution. Well, all of the fossil fuels that have ever existed on planet Earth represent the energy equivalent of 3 days of sunlight hitting planet Earth. So we've seen 150 years of unparalleled prosperity by monetizing a day and a half of sunlight. What happens when we monetize actual sunlight? What is the prosperity that lies in front of us? Energy is the only thing on this planet that comes from off of this planet. We live with fixed finite resources with the exception of energy. So what are we going to do? How are we going to behave when faced with this abundant, unlimited economic resource? Will we behave responsibly, or will we behave like frat boys at an open bar? My guess is that the drinks are on me, right? That's it. Thanks.
Told you he's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.